Hello, everybody. Chef Don, and this is Chef Zev, and we are Two Bears Podcast. And today we're going to be hopefully talking about all things culinary. So, you guys have anything new happening in your world?
Culinarily, yeah, I'm transitioning from being not really in the private sector, but in the like, more like mercenary kind of sector. Like basically, I wasn't doing private dinners for people, but chefs were hiring me to produce events and stuff like that. So I'm going from that into the like executive corporate world, which I've dabbled in. I hated it. Um, I think this time's going to be different. Last time it was with a hotel group that had no interest in the
Right,
culinary side, and they were all just really people who were in hospitality, sans culinary.
right.
And I've been brought into a big hospitality group that has many restaurants and is now shifting its focus from like more of the party to the food. So they're
Right.
trying to overhaul all the restaurants and really I mean, they're expensive, man. The one of the restaurants that I'm supposed to take over, the highest menu item is a 6 ounce or a 12 ounce crazy Japanese steak, and it's like $980.
Right.
I was looking at the menu. Yeah, it's nuts. The apps are like $32. It's, like it's already very expensive, so we're gonna make it more than worth that money.
And I think that's an awesome place to be as a chef, because a lot of times your hands are tied by the bean counters who are, they have control of the menu. And I think one of the things, and through my culinary career, that I see happen is I see really good, really talented chefs hamstrung by ownership. And the fact that you're in this restaurant group and you're given the reins to basically be able to influence what goes on the plate, I think is a very special place to be.
It is. I'm extremely blessed. The job that I've just taken, if it plays out the way that it's supposed to, is my dream job.
Right.
It's over 25 restaurants and plans to expand all singular restaurants into multiple branch restaurants
Right.
and open new concepts. The VP of culinary is Dan Peretta, who is a legendary chef, worked for Alinea for 12 years as their corporate chef. He got the stars in Royster and Aviary, I think.
All right.
Like he was the executive chef at those, and he's one of my best friends, and he loves my food, and I love his food, and together we're gonna do menus for like 35 restaurants. It's
Right.
amazing, and I'm down to. I think they're based on the menus I've read at. They told me they run at like 26% food cost, which is nuts.
Right.
I'm not sure how that's possible with so many high-end items, but I'm trying to stay under that 30 margin and just introduce some more technique and finesse into everything
Right.
and hopefully inspire people. I think a lot of the menu items have been there since opening,
Right.
and people who've been working there have been doing the same thing over and over. And I'm gonna try to inject some energy into there.
So whenever I'm looking at restaurants and I see that food cost at like the 26 or 28 mark, the one thing that I always look at is labor. So because usually that's your offset. If your food cost is down, your labor's going up. If your labor's up, your food cost is going down. So that's like one of those things that I'm always looking at the books at.
I didn't see the books, so I just did a trial. I mean, I did a tasting, and they're very happy, and they're giving me an offer. But the chef who was in charge of the books was talking to me and telling me, and that's how I know that that's what he's saying, that their
Right.
food costs. That I saw a lot of people.
Right.
I saw a lot of people working and a lot of people working less.
Right.
It seemed like there were a lot of chef jackets not cooking and a
Right.
lot of like line cooks cooking.
Right.
Um, but it's also this company is a whole different game because they do insanely high alcohol sales.
Right.
Like they all the restaurants have a lounge that opens up at 10. They're some of the most popular party spots in the city. Um, Komodo, actually the one that I did the trial at, that was one of the ones they They were talking about me being an executive chef of, which I'll probably be a co-executive chef of, and allow someone else to handle the sushi department,
Right.
even though I want the sushi department. But they did 70 million one year pre-COVID.
Right.
Now they're back down to like 38, 40. But dude, I've $70 million? $70 million, dude?
Right.
Like
Food costs at
Gaghan, the
26%.
last year we were open, I think we did 20 million and it was like crazy, Like crazy. $70 million is a big ship to sail, you know?
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the it's rumored that Noma is going to be closing down this year, and what they're citing is uh, labor cost. That it's
Okay.
cost
So
too much to run.
so all right, so this is a great topic that I have deep connection to. So in the fine dining and culinary world, especially, I don't know if it exists outside, but in fine dining, we have a system of stagiaires. Stagiaire is French for
Work for me for free.
yeah, stagiaire is French for you don't need money to work here. It's such an honor to be in this place that
Right.
you should be paying us
Exactly.
to work for us. So I had really awesome stage experiences. I staged at Nam, which is David Thompson in Bangkok, uh, one of the one of the premier Thai restaurants in the world. I'm not going to say one of the best because it's a British chef and um, there's a lot better Thai restaurants out there, but he brought a level of technique that they were unfamiliar with and applied it to them. So I got to stage there. I staged at Ga, where I ended up being a chef de partie. I staged at Gaghan, where I ended up being like a real chef. Um, I staged at Alter, but they paid me because in America they couldn't get away with it. So when you stage most of these places, you apply for a stage or for an internship, and normally they'll give you housing and they feed you while you're in the restaurant. They don't pay for your meals outside, but you get staff meal when you're in the restaurant. And besides that, you work for free. Normally, you always have 2 days off, I think. I don't know what Noma's been doing,
Right.
but so what happens here is you have really young people who are very eager to work and really are vested in their own growth. So you have these teams full of people who are young and hungry and they want to be the best and they want to learn, as opposed to when you have people who are just chasing a paycheck, right? So that's one component to it. The other component to it is it offers them a chance of not really committing to anything too much, but being able to like glean all the information they possibly can while they're there. Now, from the restaurant side, they get free labor. Now, what does free labor mean? Obviously, free labor is every business's dream, but what it really translates to in these restaurants is the ability to create menus with insane amounts of components to them. So at Gaghan, we ran a 25 course tasting menu only. There was no a la carte. There was nothing. You pay, you get the 25 courses. Each one of these courses has 3 to 7 components on it. Each one of these components takes 1 to 36 hours to make, right?
Right.
So with a normal amount of people, you could do that for 10 people a night. You could have a chef's table and do like 15 seats. But to do 150 seats a night, you need an army.
Right.
And from the restaurant side, they know it's not profitable. If they paid everyone, it would not be possible.
Right.
Right. So even though there are positives, and I had very positive staging experiences, it's very easy for it to slip into a predatory zone. You know,
Yeah.
it's like a hair away
Well, see,
from
I think
predation at any given time.
that's the soap opera you can put on TV.
Mhm.
It's because I've staged places myself, uh, and I understand that it can be very cutthroat because you don't just stage. Typically, you don't just stage at a place just to kick around and play with food. You're kind of gunning for that spot, that next paid position that comes open. And and I've seen some really, cutthroat things go down in the kitchen, trying to vie for that next paid position.
Um, yeah. So how I got the job at Gagan was after your internship, they choose. If they like you, they ask you to do a trial. You have to cook 5 original dishes, present them to Gagan and Ryder, the head chef. And if they like you, they like you. And if not, they don't.
Right,
Then, and that's that. And it's very coveted. It's easy to get jobs in a lot of places. It's not easy to keep them, but in these like world 50 best top 10 restaurants, it's always a fight. It's always a fight to get the job, and then most people leave after a year.
right,
So it creates this never-ending cycle of Hunger Games, basically. And I personally, I enjoy that thrill. I like it. I think that I think it's okay to do. I think they should be paid. I think they don't have to be paid full time because
right,
they're not doing full time work. They're doing much lower quality work in order to set up the success of the restaurant. I think there should be better benefits packages. I
right.
think that they should be nice places to stay. They should be treated well on their days off. They should have like a stipend or something. I think there's ways to work it out. Now, I have not been to Noma. I know people who've worked at Noma. I've worked for people who worked at Noma. Garima Aurora worked at Noma, and I know a lot of people who've staged at Noma. Now, Noma, I don't want to talk shit because I've never eaten it. And Noma was actually one of the restaurants that got me into all this. I saw they served live ants on raw meat, and I
Right.
was like, oh, let's do this, you
Right.
know? Uh, so Rene Redzepi has always been an idol of mine culinarily. I don't know him personally, so I can't speak anything to that. Noma became so successful and so coveted for reservations that I it got to a point where the stages were not even working on the menu at hand, and the
Right.
stages were fermenting and foraging and doing things
Right.
for the next menu.
Right.
So it got to the point where people were going there, and I'm sure they were learning, but the like what they're learning to how much they're being used, that balance of like it's like when you model and you're not in an agency, a lot of people do time for prints, right? Like
Right.
I'll let you take photos of me for 8 hours. I'll work an 8 hour photo shoot, and you're gonna give me the high quality photos from it so I can put them in my book so I can continue to grow, right? So the
Right.
stages are coming in looking for that skill set and looking for that stamp of like, I did this, I went to this boot camp, I learned this, but at the same time, like how hard are they being worked? Are they
Right.
being worked normal hours? Are they being worked 14-hour shifts, like back to back 6 days a week?
Oh
Are
yeah.
they being given tasks that facilitate their personal growth? Or are they being given tasks that the other chefs don't want to do
Exactly.
and facilitate sales in the restaurant? And I think Noma danced on that line for a long time. I think the real world is not, first of all, the fine dining world and foodie world is like 1% of the planet. And then 1% of that are people who've actually been in restaurants. So all of this has been happening for a long time, but it's never really been exposed. But I think Noma got to the point where they grew so much from where they had started culinary wise and the amount of labor that it takes to now maintain what they're doing because they're like bleaching bones to make plates and stuff now,
Right.
like the amount of labor it takes to get to where they are is starting to be a little cringy.
Right.
So
And it's, it always goes back to, what is the purpose of what we do, why we do it. And by that I mean, you know, I'm one of those types, like I love to cook, I love the technique, I love, all that aspect. And I will always admit that one of my weaknesses is plating, putting food on a plate, making it look nice. Cooking technique, all of that, all the way up to that point, I think I have that really, really dialed in. So, in my restaurant, how far do you want to go pushing those, peripheral aspects of presentation?
So that goes into another subject that kind of just transitions really smoothly because we're still talking about these fine dining restaurants. Um, Now I think we're moving into like extraneous plating and like this. So this is now theory, right? Like we were talking practical, the execution, all
Right,
that. Then now we're moving into theory, and I think before Instagram and social media and before all of that, the only way that we saw food was if you went to the restaurant
right,
or if you read cooking magazines, you know? And just for everybody who's listening or watching, most of the food you see in photo shoots is fake. Most of the food pictures you see is fake. I'm an expert at food styling, which is
right,
not cooking, and it involves really undercooking things so that they hold their shape better
right.
and brushing everything with oil and putting food coloring and dyes into things and using oil specifically in ways that you would never want to eat them and creating plates of food that are completely inedible but look really beautiful.
There was
Um,
there was once a food stylist I was talking to, and she was saying about, when they would do turkeys, they don't actually cook the turkey, they just brown the skin. And
yes.
and so she was saying, like, so what we would typically do is put a whole bunch of paper towels underneath the skin, so that way you give it, structure to really dry on. And she goes, one
Yes.
day she was in a pinch, and so she grabbed these paper towels and she's shoving them in there. And when she browned the skin, she noticed that the paper towels had little blue flowers, and all those little blue flowers like transposed
Into
through
this,
through the skins. So the turkey,
she got the nicest turkey of all time. That's impossible to eat and impossible to make.
exactly. So it was a
Yeah.
beautiful turkey with all these tiny little blue flowers over the top of it.
So now we moved into this zone where people think that restaurants are amazing because of what they see in pictures and videos without even tasting it. I've had many, many cooks ask me, "Is it true this place is the best in the world?" Like this,
Right,
and I always say to them, I can't answer that. I haven't eaten there. I've
right,
only seen the photos, and you can't eat photos. And I do food TV, and one of the most fun things about food TV is like when I go on Reddit and I see people like talking shit or praising food that's made on TV, man, none of you know anything. Like you can't eat it. You can't
right,
eat it through the TV. So we've moved into this zone where plating is like the most important thing ever because you can have the most delicious dish in the world, but only the people who eat it know that. Whereas
right,
if you have the most beautiful dish in the world, everyone on the internet knows.
right,
They don't know that it's the best, but they know that it's really pretty and they want to try it. And what this did was it created this focus on aesthetic plating, sometimes superimposed over technical cooking.
right.
So you have this really big focus on flowers, right? I did my tasting yesterday with no flowers. I
Beautiful.
ordered a bunch of flowers, and then one of the chefs was like, I was like, yo, these flowers are kind of shitty. And one of the chefs was like, yeah, corporate hates flowers anyways. And I was like, they do? No flowers, no
Right.
cress. Awesome. Half the product's dead when it gets to you. A quarter of the product dies overnight,
Yep.
and it tastes like you're eating grass. So I think that when you say that you have problems plating or putting it on the plate or whatever, that's a modern problem, and that has nothing
Right.
to do with real food. That has to do with translation and interpretation and the internet, really. But I think a lot of the times people should take a step back, and when you see something on Instagram that looks amazing and there's so many flowers and it's so bright and like the colors have so much contrast, you know what? Before you judge it, before you send that picture to your friends and everything, you should really try it because I've been to a lot of Michelin restaurants where there was a lot of plating and it was empty.
Right.
It wasn't really great food. But it looks so cool.
Thank you for tuning into Two Bears Podcast. This recording was well over an hour and a half long, so we broke it up into three segments. So please stay tuned for further releases.